this.
How do you like that? Does it, do you have an
Andy,
old
let me get
house?
back
Does it
to
work
them
with the old house without turning it into
I
like a
realize
moldy
I don't have to
mess?
sign it on the.
No, you know, we have
So,
done such a
already
dry
ran into her.
climate, it really makes a lot of
Maybe we can
sense.
spend a little bit of time tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Well, now we
Okay.
need to talk about that map.
Well,
too.
my kids are living
Okay.
upstairs, like they have the rooms upstairs and they're like, Mom, this is miserable.
Oh,
So
yeah, so hot, this time of, right now,
I feel like this is hotter than it normally is.
yeah, I think it
It's
is.
been 95 at our house,
We live in Evergreen and.
Evergreen, for crying out loud. We're usually 10 degrees cooler than Denver, and we're only like 5 degrees cooler than Denver.
Even my animals are splayed out around the house, like we
Oh,
open the
yeah.
curtains and everything, and they're like, we can't go outside, Mom, it's too hot.
Yeah, one of our cats got in the shower stall and just lies on the
That's
bottom.
hilarious.
It's cool there.
You want us to change the room around?
We can modify it for sure. I kind of started and then I got the stream going, so I'm happy to help move these tables if we want to
Okay.
get them changed up here.
We normally said, I think you said yes.
I think that's fine if people would like to. I'll adjust the camera to wherever people are sitting. How many, we're missing Patty and Vicky, or Megan.
Is Megan, is she zooming in today?
No, I think she's coming.
I thought she was coming.
I think Patty said she was zooming in. I
She
thought.
is.
So we might not.
And then we have,
All right, we are live streaming everybody just for your awareness. Phone number 316-217-2712. Can you tell me who you are?
No, it's not.
I'm sure you can do it.
Yeah.
Are you there?
I think I might join you up there, Andy, just so you know. I was thinking I might join you up here so you're on the way.
is it okay if we're not wearing a mask?
Yes, I think just when people are moving around, when people are seated.
Okay.
You guys can close to each
Yeah, right, yeah.
other.
We breathe on each other.
We're gonna get these windows fixed one of these days.
Yeah, how about that?
My list.
So is Mike Carpenter going to join us?
Mike Davenport?
I'm sorry, Mike Davenport.
Okay, yeah, yes, he's up there.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes, he's going to be giving the staff presentation.
Yeah, good.
Today.
Hi, how are you? Funny meeting in person.
I know.
Yeah.
Mike, can you hear okay? You're muted.
Yes, I can hear.
I was wondering, should we have a table down here at the end where the people that
Feels cooler.
Morris would sit, or? I
Yeah,
said,
only
is that a
psychological.
table back?
Yeah, I'll take either that or there's a podium behind you.
We could move out,
Yeah, either way.
I'm just thinking that might be better.
If you've called into the meeting, can you let me know who you are? Number 307-532 and 316-217.
John, are we gonna really need people up here, Hprc? Oh,
I wasn't intending that, but we could.
I don't know if we're gonna have room.
It is 307-532-1327 is Shane Long.
Thank you.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, we'll still get the video.
Yeah, we can do it.
Good, that's fine, fully, thank you.
Sure.
I just want to make sure we have enough room for all these.
We can set that table up really quick and it'll only take a second.
What was the thinking not
I
to
know.
just go ahead?
They just sat down. It wasn't really thought out.
Yeah.
We switched really fast, right? The other day.
Yeah.
Would you guys like to sit on the dais and we can just have the applicants at the table?
I don't know,
It
I
might
kind of
be
like
easier.
sitting down here.
Dude, how many are there of you?
Is there a plug up there? Because if there's a plug, I'm all about it.
There's also one behind you, maybe.
I'm not that.
Let's just have you guys, let's do up here.
If you don't mind, I think it'll be easier, then we can have more room down here.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Very briefly on your very.
You recognize this?
Yep, awesome, thanks.
You're
So we're moving up here.
I think we are, yeah, just it'll give us a little more room to spread out.
Good, because I need to plug my computer into this.
No, girl.
And our plugs right here, yeah. So you guys like your plug right there.
Yes.
There's three of us, so I guess we. Where are you sitting there?
I can sit, as long as I can. Okay. Thanks, Andy.
Yesterday was. Still working on things. Yeah, right, yeah.
Oh, I can see.
Is what, Wi-Fi? I don't know, but I think I'm already hooked up to Xfinity because my computer just went right into my email.
Oh, there's not.
John, this worked pretty well last night, though, this layout did.
It did.
Is that gonna work for you?
I think so.
Let me see what I can for you.
If not, I'll book
I
that one.
I do not.
How do you like that position? Does that
I
work?
got $1. Okay.
There you go.
Sorry, you know, the fastest Mac on the planet. The ball.
Hey, how you doing?
You guys give me 1 minute, let me pull up all the packet info. Feels good in here.
It sure does.
You mean because we're no air conditioning house?
Well, and I was down in Creek and Kittredge all day in the sun.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Look at this.
Are you pulling it up from the website, Megan?
Well, I was bringing it up from my email.
Go to the website, city's website, because it's revised
Oh, it
with
is.
Davenport's latest report on 1601.
Is it different from the one he emailed out on Sunday?
No.
No, not on you.
Okay,
Yeah, so you're right.
okay.
Although the one that you just uploaded, Diane, is probably the complete document, right? Not just 1601 Colorado Boulevard.
Correct, it's the complete document, or
Okay,
the complete packet.
okay, packet. Uh-huh.
All right, I think I have everything up now. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting of the HPRC on June 15th, 2021 to order at 5:17 p.m. Do a roll call
Megan Vickers,
here.
Rick Wells.
Here.
Chris Hayne,
Here.
Tim Hayne,
Here.
Patty Tyler, Lisa Manifold. Here.
Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the minutes of May 18th?
Yes.
Any corrections on those?
No.
Nope. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second?
A second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we have 3 public hearings tonight. Diane, you gave me that paper and I already lost it. I have too much stuff. Can I borrow this?
Sure.
Oh, I think that is it.
That is yours.
Stealing my
It was right there in front of me.
Okay, so our first public hearing, we will start at 5:18 PM. This is a public hearing for a COA for the storefront windows at 1600 Minor Street. And we will start with a staff report from Mike Davenport. Can't hear you.
You're on mute, Mike.
Let me ask first, I think the city administrator had talked about possibly changing the order. Is that still the case? I think it was because the new business item is a relatively short one. Were you still thinking that, Andy?
I think the idea was to get the ones that may be continued, get those out of the way first, Mike.
The ones that have been continued already? Okay, that would stay with the order that's on the agenda. Okay, so starting with 1600 Minor Street storefront. This was an application by Christopher Veritas, who is the operator of the mountain, is the operator of the restaurant at 1600 Minor Street. At the May 18th meeting of the HPRC, the board continued the matter to this month in order for two purposes. One was to allow the applicant time to look at further information regarding the approval that occurred in 2014, which is across the street at 1617 Minor Street. And that secondly, the HPRC had also encouraged the applicant to consider some design alternatives that in appearance would be closer to the existing look of the storefront. If a project receives approval of a COA, the applicant still must obtain a building permit as required by the city building codes. If the HPRC denies the request for approval, an applicant may appeal that decision to city council. In researching the history of the building, when the downtown district was nominated to be on the National Register, this building was identified as being C, which stands for contributing, which means it is one of the buildings that make it possible to have a historic district. Without contributing buildings, there isn't a historic district. So it's an important building for that reason, not for just that reason. Okay, on the Sanborn maps that are included with this report, the current building does not show up until about 1900. Prior to that, there had been several smaller buildings on the site. So the project is the applicant proposing to replace the large storefront glass panels in the storefront with a roll-up type of window, similar in terms of how it functions to a roll-up garage door, where you have several panels that will be able to then curve as they go up and wind up on the ceiling. And that shape is shown both in the photographs as well as there's a construction detail, which shows how that would work. And essentially it does have a similar operation to a garage door. In reviewing the design standards, there are several standards that it appears the project doesn't comply with, and those have been highlighted in yellow in the staff report. And there are several different ways in which it says if you're going to replace windows. They should be similar to, in appearance, to what was existing in, that you shouldn't be, you should avoid changing the number of panes. So as I mentioned, there are several like that. So in moving to looking at the criteria for approval, in summary, the plan as presented at the last meeting, and is still the plan today, it doesn't, there's two areas in which it doesn't meet. It doesn't meet these specific design guidelines regarding windows. And then secondly, the storefront windows as they appear today is usually considered to be a character defining feature of late 19th century architecture. As being one of the most identifiable features is the large windows that you have on the first floor of a structure. So that's a recap of what we had looked at last meeting. And so in terms of looking for additional information with respect to minutes, the city clerk sent the applicant the preceding minutes. The applicant, I'd previously given them I think I'd given them the minutes for the meeting in which there was a decision. There's more information in the preceding meeting. And in the preceding meeting, the board seemed to be leaning towards a concern about the change in windows for that. In going to the next meeting, there isn't a clear identification as to what changed it. The only thing I'll say, the only thing I noticed is that in looking at it, there appeared to be a number of points about which the board at that time had a concern, and sort of reading between the lines, it looked like the applicant made other changes that the board was looking for at the time. So again, from the notes at the time, I didn't see a clear statement as to what was the change in position regarding the garage door type storefront that's across the street. So that was one of the two factors that was looked at. The second one was to investigate if there are any other options. And one of the things that I did was, the American Institute of Architects has a historic preservation committee with a large email list. So I emailed the question to them, which they distributed to their mailing list. Is anyone aware of a similar type of project that's been proposed or that has been approved? And the one response, I received a number of responses, but the one that I had a specific answer is shown at the end of the staff report. The city of Orange, California has approved what you see in the top drawing there. And that is the large panes of glass that you see in the windows. If you enlarge that drawing, you'll see there's an up arrow on those windows. Those large panels, and those are single panes of glass in each that's bounded there, is that those do lift up several feet. And again, that was something that was approved by the city of Orange in a historic structure. They are also looking at another possible application, which relates to the two drawings on the bottom of that page. The drawing on the left shows the outside, and the photo on the left shows the outside. The photo on the right is looking at it from the interior, and you can see an employee who is hoisting up the window pane. You can also see at the top of that picture, the window pane is now in a horizontal position up at the ceiling. So this is something that I think is not an application yet, but it is something that the city of Orange. So those were the two examples I received back in asking that question. And this is information just to share with the board and share with the applicant. I believe I had discussed these with the applicant. So that is the staff report.
Thank you, Mike. And now I'm gonna turn it over to the applicant, Chris Veracos, and Diane will swear you in.
Do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Well, I guess why I'm here again for a second time
was to find an ulterior solution to satisfy the board with less windows, less, I guess, boxes, kind of keep it true to the way the building was. But I was not able to get even anyone up here to take a look or do anything. Everyone's just, I don't know if it's the environment we're in, but everyone's just booked out. No one can come anywhere. You live in the mountains, blah, blah, blah. But I haven't been able to do that. I also tried to get pictures of anything I could find, and I was trying to use the Denver Public Library, but again, never got back to me, never answered a phone, responded to a phone call or an email. Not that there were pictures available, but I can't seem to find anything. What I was able to find on my own was just, everything was taken from so far away and it was so long ago that it's hard to get a read on what the building actually looked like. Now, I don't know, I mean, where I can't find proof that the building was different, I can't see any proof where the building is the same. It kind of swings both ways. But we also were looking for the minutes from across the street, where those guys were able to put in a roll-up door, kind of similar to what we're looking to do, and that had gone through. Obviously, I don't know who was on the board at the time. It was 7 years ago, maybe one person, maybe no one. But that was a precedent set, but you guys said in the last meeting, precedent doesn't actually go to a second building, and then you said you didn't want to have every storefront with a roll-up windows. Now, if the precedent isn't from 1 to 1, could it stop at us? That would be up to you. But I don't have any definitive proof to help my case.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, ma'am. Sadie Schultz is here for public comment. Sadie, are you there?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the notate that when, especially when they're right across from each other, it does create more consistency in the look to have the same, especially if the larger panels were something that Mountain Prime could do. I think that it's difficult to have one building literally right across the street be told yes, and the other building told no. So that's really my public comment for this.
Thank you, Sadie. So we will close unless there's anything else, no more public comment? Okay.
As a staff, there's what I'd like to mention, something that was in the staff report, is that I've met with the applicant at the restaurant and at Mountain Prime, and we've talked on the phone. And based on that conversation, the proposed motion is basically to give the applicant additional time. He was originally hoping to be able to do this work this summer, and he said he recognizes now that's not possible, and that it might be more realistic, or he might have a better chance of getting a response from an architect, from a designer, or from a contractor in the fall than it is now. So that is the staff recommendation. It actually says tabling a continuation to a specific date, but also accomplish the same thing. But I just wanted to mention that was the recommendation was from staff, was to give the applicant more time, because he has indicated he's willing to look at other options.
Okay, thank you. So I will close this portion of the public hearing at 5:32, and we will turn it over for the commissioners' discussion.
Okay, Chris and I visited the building a few days ago, and had not realized that there was actually like an aluminum storefront system that had been installed sometime, we don't know how long ago, but it's not the original windows like you had said. So, and it was, and I think it actually looks fine. And proportionately, it's doing the right thing. It's one single opening, but, covered with glass, no intermittent mullions. And so that's really our hang up is we don't want to see horizontals because it's not in keeping with the vertical character of and over the course of history, these large open windows were always without muttons. They were always a single pane. So that's where we have issue with what we want to do. We don't have any issue with the idea of having an operable window there. I think that's great. Yeah. We're working on the Tabor, we're architects, and we're working on the Tabor Opera House right now. And there's an architect up there that we know who's a preservation architect. We tossed out the idea of her contacting you or you contacting her. And she said she'd be willing to talk with you. And I think she sounded like she was interested in helping you out. There's a couple different options. You could install basically a very large double hung window with a lower sash that operates.
So basically slides up, like a,
So there'd be one
no,
bar through, no?
Well, just, right now you've got a large storefront window, and then you've got a transom window that's divided in half, right? So you have a vertical proportion for the upper part. You would create a new double hung window, albeit a very large double hung window, and I'm not sure whether it would be wood or whether it would be aluminum. I don't think that's that much of an issue to us. You could do it in aluminum. But that one option is to do that and have it operable. Or you could have a window just like the one that was presented by Mike that hinged up at the top. You have a new.
Those are 500-pound, 1,000-pound pieces of double pane
That's
glass.
that's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah, and our winds up here and our shears and all that stuff. I mean,
Right.
So
It makes more sense to lift it vertically.
or I mean, if each window was split like a patio kind of thing, where it'd be vertical and then one pushed behind the other.
yeah. I think we were just looking at one single pane
Yeah,
like
that
we
would
have
be-
now.
It's just they're heavy and dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at your.
Someone
store.
smarter than me will probably be able to figure it out, but it's.
Well, we can tell you that the windows at the Tabor Opera House, they're double hung windows that were done in 1879. They're 5 feet wide, they're 12 feet tall. So each pane is each sash is 6 feet high. And again, anything that you would construct would have to be counterweighted, obviously.
Yeah.
You probably have to have exposed counterweights inside that's not, I don't think that's a deal breaker.
No, I don't think so.
You make that as part of the look.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in talking with this architect that we know, I think that's a first step that we could.
I would take anyone that's willing to talk at this
Yeah,
point.
right. Because I understand what you want to do, and we're
Yeah.
sympathetic to the idea.
Yeah.
We just don't want to see horizontal
Gotcha.
subdivisions, and so if that suits you, then we'll certainly pass your name
Yeah,
along to her, and she can contact you.
I got,
Well, I'm gonna just jump in real quick and say that I do have a couple photos that show that front. One of them is probably about 1900, and then the other one is 1915 to 1920. Then the third picture is today, but you can see that historically there were the big windows in that building. The other alternative is could you make the transom windows operable? I mean, if your concern is to get air circulation and airflow.
Air and sight
Okay.
is the other thing too, ground level. Opening, I mean, my business partner, we made that building, like, as far as artwork and everything, to the period of the building. I mean, we really took time and researched it, so it's like, I'm not gonna say it's better looking inside than out, but it's not far off. It's very pretty and it's really
It is
hard
pretty.
to see. I mean, we are bound by a rabbit hole of an entrance and very dark windows. I mean, and it's just hard to, unless you walk in to the building itself, it's hard to see how beautiful it is.
Chair Vickers?
Carmen.
Chair? Hi. It's, sorry, members of the commission and chair. you had closed the public, just a little procedural note from me. The public hearing was closed and you were in the board deliberation phase. And if there are additional materials now that the commission would like to review and accept, like photos, that is fine. Whoa, I'm big. That's fine. If you could do me the procedural nicety of simply, Madam Chair, reopening the hearing and accepting and putting those pictures and those photos on the record. And then procedurally, we'll have done what we need to do. And then if you could give the owner's applicant the opportunity to say anything he wishes to on the record about those photos, that would check that little box as well. I realize you may be headed towards a continuance or a tabling, and that's fine. I don't want to elevate form over substance here, but if you could just admit those and reopen the hearing for that purpose to get those pictures in, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna reopen the hearing at 5:39 and admit 3 photos of 1600 Minor Street.
I think it's a data. Yeah, I don't, these are 1500. Yeah, that's.
I don't know about that. Not sure.
You can see where Donnelly's. Yeah, Donnelly's is in that photo, and the corner entrance. And that's how, those are the window styles. It's tough, everyone took pictures of one in town, the other one got in the middle.
That's a different building.
Yes.
It's got a 45-degree corner. Yeah.
Well, but it doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't that building.
It wasn't modified.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen, I just didn't get. Yeah, we got a lot there.
Because you can see the posts are the same.
Not really.
And maybe you could note that they're of the vicinity of a certain location or at or around a certain location, just to get those in. I don't know if you need to be precise about the address, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So.
You bet.
Pass them down. Yes. So those photos may not be that correct building, but it is a building within a block. So it is evidence of those storefront windows being a defining characteristic. Any other comment on those before I close the meeting again?
Oh, this is public comment right now?
Yeah.
I think we need to be careful about what we're introducing. If they don't, if they're not germane to this particular situation, we don't want to muddy the waters with pictures that aren't relevant to this particular case.
Okay.
So.
Well, I will close the meeting again at 5:41 and we'll go back to our discussion.
Yeah. I wanted to just continue with what Tim was talking about. Again, we were in Leadville the other day, and we are working with a window contractor who does beautiful, he does restoration work. But he also, we talked to him about these vertically sliding windows. And he is interested in talking to you about that also. He would work with this architect that Tim mentioned, but I just wanted to let you know that there's.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's willing to even come and just see what we're trying to do and give us some advice would be great.
Sorry, Rick.
They said they kind of.
Now, I am curious, and I don't know if anybody has an answer to this, but why the windows are different. That there was one window up front that's a different width.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's not uncommon. That was done. There's all sorts of
We don't
strange.
have a reason for that though.
They were lining the second column up from the left directly on the masonry pier above. And then I don't know, they did strange things that we see that all the time, asymmetrical bays. It's not that uncommon, we'll see that.
yeah, they're not, even the ones that look the same aren't the same. They're
Right,
off by a few inches.
yeah.
And do you think there's enough height for the vertical window lift? between that and the.
Well,
overflow.
it doesn't have to open all the way up, right? You're looking just to have a connection for the people sitting at the tables.
And
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, it doesn't need to be.
And so you've got that, the panel at the
3, 4
bottom, that's probably.
4 feet would be, yeah.
Right,
And again, it's up from the street too. There's a stage, so they'll be walking height, they'll be able to kind of see.
right. And you could still have a window that was at an upper sash smaller than the lower sash.
And there's still, there's room too behind even where that other window goes, like that.
Right,
It would just be a single pane sliding up.
right, right. It would actually wouldn't be a double hung, it would be,
No,
it would be a single
Goes
hung.
back and then slides.
It kind of functions like a single hung
Oh,
window,
Right,
but it'd be
yeah.
a single pane.
The upper sash would be fixed and the lower sash would be operable,
Seems
only
like
as
a
high as
real-
it could go until it hit something to prevent it from going
Only
in front of there.
transom
The transom's fixed and then this window would be
is one single.
one single unit, the same size as the existing. That's really what we're looking for. That's the goal. I think if you could see what you can do.
Yeah.
At this point, see what you can do.
All I can do is ask, see if it's possible.
I have a question for people who've been around longer. Do we know when those windows were put in that are tinted that dark? Do you have any idea?
It's not a film either.
It's the actual-
the tints in the glass.
Okay.
So I don't know when that.
I'm just
technology
curious
arrived.
because that's also frowned upon. So,
They snuck it in.
Yeah.
So were these windows,
For Hprc.
yeah, well,
were these windows replaced before the historic district was formed?
that's what we're wondering maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
They
can
have
speak
a
about
aluminum
it.
right. They actually don't look that bad. If it's there.
Frames don't
It's a
look
2-inch frame.
It was early 90s.
Early 90s?
Yeah,
early 90s.
I can find out more information about that. too.
Okay.
There's still minutes in the back of the book.
So if you are open to continuing to do research, because I mean, I think we're all in agreement, we would love to be able to accommodate something to open those windows. I mean, that's ideal. But I think that we're just in the plans that have been presented to us, that just doesn't meet the standards. So if you're open to continuing to do some research on that and connect with some people,
Yeah, I mean, because I could give you a mock-up, but I just don't know if it's viable.
Right.
Without
right?
someone.
Okay.
coming in there.
So do we want to, commissioners, make a motion to continue this to a later time and date? Which we would have to be able to say when that would be, or do we want to table it and have you reapply? Table it?
I would say table it so that they could work with.
Well, yeah, I don't want to put that pressure on, to say I
Yeah.
have to get it done.
It's
So,
summer too, I don't have the time either.
Okay.
To really focus right now.
Okay,
That was a staff guideline as well.
yeah. So do we have someone who wants to make that motion?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm gonna use Mike's recommended motion. I move to table the application to approve operable storefront windows at 1600 Minor Street to allow the applicant additional time to further investigate a window design that is consistent with the relevant sections of the design guidelines.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming again, and
Yeah,
we definitely want to work with you. to
I like
find
the
a solution.
face-to-face better than Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, just, keep us posted.
We'll reach out, yeah.
Reapply, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a business card for them. We have contact information for them, we can give.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay,
Madam Chair, we need a
Thank
date
you.
certain for that continuance.
we tabled it. Do we need a date if we tabled it for them to reapply?
Carmen says no.
No?
No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. Do we want, so this was where, are we still following the order? Okay. So we're gonna open the public hearing for the COA for the rehabilitation of 1601 Colorado Boulevard. It is 5:47 PM. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike Davenport again for a staff report.
Mike, you're muted again.
And just a clarification at the beginning, this actually should be referred to as both a restoration and a rehabilitation. There are significant parts of the building. A significant portion of the building is being restored, but there are other places where there are things that are different than what the building ended up with looking like at the end of the period of significance. But it does include both restoration and rehabilitation elements. To just more briefly recap this time, as you know, the board did hold a hearing on this at your last monthly meeting, and going through and trying to look in detail on all sides of the building what the applicant is proposing. It appears that pretty much all the features comply with the applicable approval criteria or the design guidelines. And there's really just one, I think, significant consideration left, and that is the exterior finish of the log cabin portion, or the log cabin addition that was made to the building. The applicant is proposing to give that part of the building the exposed exposed logs, essentially a very similar look to the original house, which makes up most of the building. And I think the major issue that occurs there relates to one of the design guidelines, which states that older additions may take on historic significance of their own in that period, that time period after the end of the period of significance. So in staff's opinion, I think that's the one main related issues. And I'll just recap the concern from a staff standpoint is there is a guideline that specifically addresses this, which we obviously need to deal with. The points that the applicant has raised, and I'll just recap them quickly, is that is the condition of the logs themselves. Is so far they have found evidence of deterioration within the staff report. There are some preliminary findings by the engineer that's been hired by the applicant to assess the condition. And the initial comments are that the log wall may no longer have enough strength in terms of what you would want to have in terms of supporting the roof and any load coming down on them, to where they're considering they may have to build another wall anyway to handle that load coming down. The second point the applicant raises is that there's a picture of it in the staff report. The house that is diagonally across the intersection of the alley and the street, according to the newspaper articles, appears to be, that is what was referred to as the cottage that used to sit where the log addition was built. And from looking both at the building today and looking at the one historic photo, which I think is from the Historic Society, the Idaho Springs Historic Society, it looks like that house did have a similar appearance, similar type of walls, similar type of details. One thing that in particular stands out is that the house across the street has a pediment over the windows, which is fairly distinctive. And you see that in the historic photo, both on the original house or the main building, as well as in the background where you see the cottage building. So those are several of the points the applicant has raised in terms of why the applicant thinks it would be appropriate to have the finish on the addition or the log structure match. In other words, that would be covering up it in the same way that the other part of the building was covered up with the log imitation. So the staff recommendation is essentially that we should follow the design guide, the board should follow the design guideline. And that the logs should remain exposed in the addition portion. But beyond that, the applicant has a variety of things that they could do in terms of appearance, including since the city standards don't say what type, how they could be painted. So there are various things that could be done to try and make the logs look more compatible. But the recommendation and the proposed motion is to basically leave the logs exposed on the interior side, but otherwise allow the applicant to make other adjustments to help integrate the appearance of that part of the building with the rest of the building. And that's the staff report.
Thank you, Mike. And I will now have Diane swear in our applicants, which Jonah and Lana Hearn.
Do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Okay, so of course, obviously, it's good to see you guys all in person. Jonah, Lana, and then you'll see Shane Long up there, my brother-in-law. He was a partner with their, and Travis joined us as well. Essentially, what we want to kind of go over is the project real quick. So this is about the revival of the Club Hotel. And when you look back at the newspaper articles, we refer to the Townsleys back in 1922, about 100 years ago. We also purchased the property, as did they, that had been through somewhat hard times. While they had to renovate a hotel that had been through 2 fires the previous year, we are essentially having to clean out about 29 additional rooms and a lot of other things that have happened in that building, which we are in the process of doing right now. We are looking to, just as they did 100 years ago, reopen that hotel as a Victorian guest house. Now, 100 years later, from what the Townsleys did, we hope to, launch this new hotel, the Club Hotel, here in, 2022, which would be exactly 100 years from when they did that. They added a new ladies' sitting area, a couple other features to the hotel, but otherwise, the hotel was exactly as it was before the Victorian guest house, with the 5-room cottage in the back. It had the clapboard siding, coining on the corners, oriel windows, all these things that were shown in the pictures. And this is what our proposal is to the committee. The main point, obviously, is the log structure that Mike brought up has been degrading significantly over the time that it's been there. We've had the structural engineer look at it, and that's referenced in the staff report, where we are going to have to do some work on rebuilding that corner section of the building. There's a couple different options we're going to pursue. Obviously, the main point, what we want to do, we've had, several contractors. I've had another contractor look at it as well. We are in the process of getting exactly what the optimal solution is, but the consistency that I'm hearing from the contractor at this point is completely rebuilding it with log meant to be exposed and kind of there for the public view is definitely the more expensive option versus where we can rebuild that wall slightly differently, but in the essence of what it is, but then put a covering over top of it is the least expensive option that we have available to us now, and also will preserve the building much more permanently versus just rebuilding logs, which logs tend to degrade over time. So also we do, and this is kind of another point, because in just the last couple of weeks too, we've been approached by a couple different people kind of asking about, what the purpose of the hotel is going to be once we reopen it, because
there is still kind of a little bit of the connection to the lodge and, you know, kind of the long-term housing of what it was over the last 20, 25 years. A real big point of our proposal is really getting back to that club hotel and providing the separation between what was the building the last 25 years and what it will be as the club hotel of 100 years ago. We've been very firm yet polite about this is not for long-term rentals. This is for nightly rates. We're here to induce tourism and also partnering with local businesses in the community to bring forward, you know, more customers, more enthusiasm. I just had a conversation today with some people down in the Coors Brewery area that they came up to Idaho Springs just last weekend. We're very excited about the possibility of a hotel that they could come and do a quick weekend getaway. And I said, give me a little bit of time and we'll have that ready for you. So we really want to make sure we're providing, I think, the right building for the historic area that matches and fits with it. Now, you know, to speak to Mike's point on the city's motion or recommended motion, the point we're really trying to make here is the city is not presenting evidence that the log addition has in itself gained historical significance. They are just pointing out, here's the guidelines and here's the point in the guidelines that basically say if it has. So what we are essentially asking the historical committee is that, you know, we want approval on our proposal without conditions. And the purpose behind that is because the club hotel has historical significance as defined by the application to become an historical district. Our proposal follows those guidelines to the letter. And then, of course, any historical difference or significance that the original house is not really up for debate. It's been well established. The question before the committee is that if we are to retain the exposed logs, what is historically significant about those logs? Because at this point, with all the research that we've done and all the evidence we've provided, we have not found nearly the type of evidence that supports a criteria saying it has achieved historical significance of its own. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we have public comment on this one as well. Sadie?
I think Jonah did a great job covering all the points that I wanted to mention. So I'm just here to support.
Thanks, Sadie. I don't have anything else to introduce this time.
Okay.
Okay, so I am going to close the public hearing at 6:01 p.m. and we will turn it over to the commissioner's discussion. I'll jump in. One of the things I've struggled with this one is that there is nothing in the guidelines that covers this exact situation. There are things that cover original buildings. There are things that cover new additions. There's nothing that covers an addition that's not new but wasn't original, if that makes sense. But I pulled out, and I read this thing front to back, and I read the city guidelines and everything, and there's a section in the city guidelines. I guess to me, I'm wondering, because I saw your comment that you really have only found one contractor who could do it, and it's pretty cost prohibitive. Could we, as the commission, treat this as a new addition because that building itself is not part of the significant time period of significance within the historic district? And then to do that, it says it should be distinguishable from the existing building so it can be understood as a more recent change. This can be accomplished with a jog in the wall planes or by using a corner board to define the connection, or a subtle change in material or a subtle differentiation between historic and more current styles. And I guess where I'm going with that is, could you do the clapboard siding on it, but put like a corner board or a dividing line in it so that it's obvious that it's a separate part of the structure?
Yeah, I think we would have almost no choice just how that would, because it would be such a different application to some extent. I don't think we would have a choice but to have, like, there will be a transition.
Okay. And I don't know what the rest of the commission feels about that. I kind of wanted to throw in, like, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact there was nothing that matches this exact situation in the guidelines. So.
And understand the windows. The windows will, I mean, we will reframe the windows to match, but they're gonna be different sizes, different shapes.
Right.
I looked up the National Register because I wanted to see, by the time the National Register was applied, when the application was put in, that addition was already there. And all it says there's a porch on the front and west side, several additions to the building, including dining room. It doesn't make any specific mention that the dining room is not clapboard, it's log, because I wanted to see if there was something that stated that it was a different material, and a different look. And the other thing that because like Megan, I also went looking for something that would give me more of a foothold. And when I looked at the guideline for rehab from the Secretary of Interior, it says they cannot tell the building owner which features of a historic building are important in defining the historic character and must be preserved, or which features could be altered if necessary for the new use. And I think that's, for me, is a sticking point because, and I brought this up at the last meeting, we're a 160-year-old town, so we're going to have a lot of additions and things. Thank God I don't live in the historic district. Seriously, I mean, all my neighbors, like, we would all be in trouble. So I feel like we have to, what that is telling me from the Secretary of Interior is that we have to make a case-by-case basis. But one of the things that we have to look at is what is going to help owners for the new use. And my third concern is one that you brought up. What is it going to take to structurally rehabilitate those logs? I worry that it is cost prohibitive, but also, is that going to be something that is a permanent thing? Will it continue to be a problem? Because I went around, I didn't come in and tour with you guys, but I went around and, nosed around the entire building, and it is in terrible shape. I'm sure we've all seen it. They did not take care of it.
The interior was too.
I did tour it. I looked in the windows. It did not look pretty. So those are my concerns with that, because like Megan, I didn't find anything that said, okay, it wasn't in the period of significance, but it is not a new addition. So here's how you look at it. And the statement that stands out for me is which features need to be altered for the new use. You're a new owner. And I didn't think about, you are also coming up against a 25-year history as a long-term boarding house.
I didn't think about it.
I didn't, that was not even on my radar. That's something also I think that should be considered. If you're already being asked, will this be a boarding, like, I don't know, like, for new, it goes back to that whole idea of the new use. I'm all over the place, but I have a lot, I can't get a very specific straight line on this one.
I did, I went through the guidelines and the Secretary of the Interior standards also. And under rehabilitation, there's an item number 3. It says each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings, shall not be undertaken. And the addition, the dining room addition, it was designed in the rustic style, which is kind of significant. There aren't too many examples in Idaho Springs. Tim and I looked at the building, and there is the dining hall looks like it's in pretty good condition. It was placed on a concrete foundation. It's raised above grade. The entry addition is up to the north. There is settlement at the northeast corner, which I think is what your concern is. We've worked on log buildings. I'm not all just one. But just being in this field, we know people that can repair that. I think that entry addition really just needs a new foundation. I think you need to shore it up. I think you need to remove the bottom log and replace it with a concrete foundation. Some of the log ends at the corner, those are deteriorated and split. Those could be replaced. I think it's totally doable. And that rustic style, I think that was chosen because that building was called the Lodge. And that style was popular between about 1900 and 1930. And I think that building, that addition was intended to be like a hunting lodge. In fact, I did read a newspaper article about it, and it said that the owner actually hung guns in the dining hall and had Navajo rugs. And so he was really playing up that idea of a lodge of the rustic style. And also at the gable end, the front facing gable end, there's some really nice detailing of those logs, the way they were placed. It's the siding. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, I don't know if everyone can appreciate it like we can, but I'm definitely opposed to putting anything on the top of those logs because I do think it's creating a false history. And I do think that we should celebrate that rustic style in Idaho Springs. You know, if you were not in a historic district, if this building was not in a historic district, you could cover it up if you wanted. But we are in a historic district, and I'm afraid that this could set a precedent for other building owners. You know, a lot of historic buildings need repair. And so if we just said, okay, it's too expensive to repair that building, we're just gonna cover it up and, you know, put some new material on the outside, you know, we'd end up not having a historic district. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
You know, the settlement at that corner, the northwest corner of the log building, it's totally from just the bottom 2 courses, the bottom 2 logs have rotted, they're in really bad shape. And because the lower log shouldn't even have been set there, they should have raised the concrete foundation up like they did on the southern end. And we know contractors that could take that out, remove that lower log, replace that second log, no problem. Yeah, right. We work on the hose house, the central hose house over there behind the library. Are you familiar with that building?
It's right next to the library.
Right next to the library.
I'm familiar with the library. But...
Right. It's the old hose house. It's to the west of the library. That building, they had put asphalt 2 feet thick against the wood side of the building, and then it sat there for, I don't know, 50, 60 years, and the bottom sill timber, which was like an 8x8 timber, water got in there. It totally, it just rotted it basically, and it twisted it about at a 45. And the contractor that worked on it was able to replace that. It's a 40-foot high tower. He was able to stabilize it in place, replace the sill plate, and it's as good as new. So it's doable. I really don't think it's that expensive to repair. It looks worse than it is. It's not that hard to do. You just need to find the right contractor.
Which we could point you to.
Which we could point you to.
Well, I was gonna, I'm sorry, is it okay for me to respond?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so Secretary of Interior's guidelines are pretty clear that there's 4 different ways of preserving the historic building. We specifically are going with the restoration guideline, and I didn't see anywhere that said we could not go with the restoration guideline, specifically because we're trying to restore it back to a specific time. And I understand what you're saying about the historical, if I'm understanding what you're saying the architecture itself is historical, not that there's no historical significance to the addition itself.
We think there's historic significance. It's been there 100 years.
Well, there's a lot of buildings that have been around for 100 years that have not garnered historical significance. So what makes this particular addition?
It's considered a contributing structure in the historic district. It is contributing. It's
and
historic.
Actually, if you went with the restoration guideline for that addition, you would keep the logs. I mean, that's you're restoring.
We're restoring it back to the pre-1910 period,
but you're adding material that was never there before. You're creating a false sense of history.
And I guess we look at it as we are actually restoring the history that was there, not creating a false sense of history.
That's the point of the cottage and why we bring that up. And
we understand
and how that matches.
We understand your logic and wanting to make it look,
Yeah.
all the same, but that's not how it was built.
I'm gonna jump in. Rick, do you have anything you wanna say?
I'm on the fence. Is that a good way to say it?
So I guess
I'm sitting here,
Right.
I've been debating about it, tossing it around in my mind, since we've been discussing this, and I fall on both sides of the argument. And I'm gonna have to make a decision based on everybody's points, and I will make that decision when we cast ballots. So I will make a decision, but I see the merits of both arguments. I really do. I see the merits of both arguments. I do understand that it in and of itself has a historical purpose because of the way it was created for the purpose of which it was intended, which is what we're saying up here. But I also understand that its original purpose was not necessarily what the original purpose of the hotel was not necessarily for what this cabin was built for. If I were to give my honest opinion right now, I would say I'm falling in line with the structure itself has a purpose.
Okay, and I mean, I'm gonna be honest, when we started this 2 meetings ago, because this is your 3rd time with us, I fell on the side of the log should stay, because I thought, they were there, but realistically, I mean, when we got our historic designation in 1984, yes, the period of significance is 1887 to 1920. That building was built in 1927, so that addition doesn't even fall within our period of significance. And like I mentioned to you before, I mean, ideally, we would say if you're gonna do restoration, then you tear it down and you restore it without, but that's an undue burden. We would never ask for that. But to me, that's why we would treat it as a new addition, because it was new following the period of significance. And then the logs didn't even go on the rest of the building until it says 1941. So to me, I'm looking at it, those logs don't fall within our period of significance. And honestly, rustic architecture is not part of Idaho Springs significance. I mean, it really isn't.
Well, it makes it unique.
Well, but that's not why it was nominated.
Well,
I mean, like you look over at
But
Evergreen.
A castle isn't. Yeah, I mean, a castle was built here, and we really don't have royalty and principalities and things like that, but we have a castle that's very important to our culture.
and I
But is the castle listed?
Is it?
I don't think
I
so.
think they're outside of the.
They're outside of the district, and I don't think they're even listed,
Outside
are
of the
they?
district.
It was not recommended for designation either.
Yeah.
In the new survey, that may change, and it may be that in the new survey, we identify another period of significance specifically related to US 6, but that has not been identified yet.
I mean, because and I'm gonna throw out an example from Evergreen, you have Highland Homestead Museum, which is rustic architecture, it's a log building. It is listed on the National Register, but it's not necessarily because of its log building. Like that is not, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a defining feature, but it also was the person who built it and his significance to Episcopalian music. And so you have to look at the building and the construction. And I'm gonna say, I think it's the building itself is what's significant, not how it was built. I mean, it doesn't, that addition just does not fall within our period of significance. To me, I don't see the value in requiring a very, very costly restoration on something that isn't within our significance.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think Carmen would like to weigh in.
Yes, Carmen.
Hi, Chair Vickers and members of the commission. To the extent you wish to expand your discussion beyond the board and your own deliberations as a commission and have further discussions with the applicant or staff, I just once again procedurally would steer you towards opening up the hearing again, and because all of that discussion with the applicant to protect their rights, as well as the integrity of your decision, all that sort of needs to be on the record of the hearing. And then once you're good and satisfied that you've gotten any kind of input from anybody else off of the sides of the dais, then you could close that again. I know I'm being a procedural pest, but that's why I'm here. So if you would do that, that would be great. You bet.
So, okay, then I will reopen this public meeting at 6:17 so that we can continue our dialogue. It's been a really really long time since we've met in person. I forget how to like function.
I know, it's okay, I know.
No, you do a good job, Megan.
Thanks. So, I mean, I guess like I said, I have completely changed where I fell on this issue because of, I've been reading through the guidelines and again, this doesn't really fall within a specific guideline. There's nothing that addresses this particular issue.
I wanted to say, I want to thank you guys, by the way, because this is your third time coming before us. And we've had, every time you've been here, even though this is the first time we're here for a COA, we've had some pretty intense discussions because we all have very strong feelings about this. So I want to say thank you, at least on behalf of myself and probably for the rest of the board, that you have been willing to cooperate and collaborate with us. I think that makes, this is not an easy decision, but I do think it helps that you're willing to collaborate with us. Do you have like you gave us an idea of what you were thinking about beforehand. Do you have a rendering that you are leaning towards right now? Is there something we could see? I'm asking basically, is there something we could see?
I think it was included in your packet.
It's in the,
Yeah, there should be a photo
Oh, right
in the
there.
package.
It came on Sunday from Mike Davenport with the whole.
I don't know that I'm on the,
No, well, Mike reached out to me to get your email, but I don't know if he had a chance to send that,
let me see. I have a couple of these
right?
packets.
I'll pull it up here.
Okay, hold on. I think I have
Wasn't
it.
it this one?
Yep.
Here, it's in your packet. It's the one where it's like kind of a green.
Yeah, I mean, this is black and white, but
Oh, okay.
so if you wanted to. This is not the final construction value. So.
I don't want to ruin your blueprints.
We're okay.
It's okay. I'll
We're
just
okay. We've done a lot of laying them out.
step over. Oh, thank you. Yeah, this, I didn't.
She's saying
Oh,
this,
okay.
Yeah.
she got it covering.
Okay.
Got the color version.
Show up. Okay, thank you.
I'm sure.
So it looks like we have two who think that it should stay with the logs and two who think it should go with the clapboard and one undecided.
You know, again, I looked at the design guidelines and under wood siding, it says original building material should not be covered. So again, this is pointing to, you know, adding another material over those logs. And then there's another guideline under number 4, preservation of historic features. It says avoid adding features that were not part of the original building. So again, that's, you know, kind of pointing to what you're proposing. So I'm just going to say that just with our experience, if this project came before the State Historical Fund for review, we get the same response from them as you're getting from us.
I think we need to be careful on that conjecture. I don't think we can speak on behalf of
Okay,
other,
sorry.
this is our board, so
Okay, sorry.
that's okay. I just,
Sorry.
yeah.
And so-
I'll retract it.
And just one last statement, from me. Basically, so to speak to the point and just kind of reiterate our point 3 is, you know, the original building of the guest house itself, right? Which is, you know, obviously built in 1882. At the time, not much later, it had the kitchen and the cottage built behind it. And what we are putting forth is that is the original structure, that is the original historical building that we are trying to preserve and essentially restore. Later on, obviously, there were decisions made and people did things and they had, you know, grand ideas. And those ideas, obviously, we're going to use in the history of this place. But we are working on restoring the original building as we're defining it. And that's obviously the difference here is as we define it as the cottage and the guest house as best as we can, given the circumstances of the current condition.
want to ask for a clarification. If you go with the clapboard siding, it is going to go over the existing logs, correct?
Yes.
You're going to stabilize and
Yeah,
it would go over the logs.
yeah, like kind of the prevailing thought is we might have to actually build a wall on the interior to stabilize that corner. And then it's kind of, the structural engineer obviously hasn't done that work yet to decide what exactly that repair looks like. He's just kind of designated it as a problem. And so if we do that, we're basically not changing the exterior outside of like covering the logs, but putting an interior wall to act as the actual structure.
So I guess where I'm going with that is theoretically what you're doing is reversible. I mean,
Yeah,
Yes.
because right now you're gonna take the logs off and there's the original clapboard siding underneath, thank goodness. of the-
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
but
amazing.
it's kind of doing the reverse on the addition so that you're not actually doing something irreversible. So someday down the road,
The worst thing you're gonna get is furring strips along the wall.
okay,
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, we're preserving it in the sense that
It's gonna
by
be
covering
protected
it,
from
we're
the
offering
weather.
more protection.
and that also, I mean, makes me much more inclined to approve that as well then, because it is something that is not an irreversible change. And then the other thing that would be to, I mean, document, make sure you're documenting everything that you're doing and pictures of it, and maybe, you know, I mean, like you said, make that a big part of your presentation of the history of it, but.
And that's one of the one of the requirements of the restoration guidelines is that any restoration that you do that does modify any additions to the building, that you properly document those.
Madam Chair, Mr. Davenport has a comment.
Oh, thank you, Don. Mike?
Oh, I just wanted to mention what you were talking about, being able to reverse it. I believe that is the Secretary of Interior Standard number 9 that talks about, is the change that is being made, is it reversible? So there is a Secretary of Interior standard that specifically talks to that point.
Thank you.
Comment?
Yeah.
Your building's right on the property line, so if you're adding material, you're actually going into the right of way of the street. I'm assuming it's on the property line. Do you have a survey? Have you?
Yes, so on the side that's connected to our neighbor there, the 1 foot into lot 9 is right up on the property line. Fortunately, the siding along that part of the building is regular clapboard siding. It's just been painted. It doesn't even have log or anything like that that's on it. So it was just painted the same color. So it is still the same siding as before. So we're not going to need to add, we just have to repair.
I'm referring to
talking about the alley,
I'm
the 2
referring to
inches
the,
into the
to
alley.
the 16.
Oh, the 2 inches into the alley?
Yeah, there's an
No,
issue in
onto
the
the
alley.
street, onto the street,
Oh,
16th,
16th.
16th.
Yeah.
The surveyor did not call anything out there at all. He just called out, we're touching basically the boundary between us and our neighbor there.
On the west, on the east side.
And we have,
He must
I
have,
think, 2 inches into the alley as well.
your survey.
Madam Chair, Travis, their architect, has his hand raised.
Great. Travis, go ahead.
Yeah, it's 1 foot 3,
Well, we need to-
1.3.
We need to swear in, Travis.
Sure, yeah.
You swear the testimony you were about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. The surveyor has it marked as 1.3 feet off of the property line, as far as the face of that building goes. And I don't know if the surveyor took that off of the face of the log wall or if they took it off of the ends of the log tails that are existing. But all of the cladding work will take place, you know, in between those extents of those walls, between the log tails and then the stone of the chimney. So we wouldn't really actually be going out past the outer perimeter of the building at any point.
The chimney in the corner.
So you propose to remove the rafter tails off the log ends?
I think we were going to try and build around those to make those appear as coins, but there will probably be and we haven't studied that detail yet, but we can use the same nominal dimensions of the log tails to create those coins again, because it pretty much matches the original building.
Yeah.
There's like an inch difference.
none of the contractors I've talked to have talked about cutting off those things.
Yeah, we just fix to the sides of them and build out from them. So, you know, you go to the outer face and then you build out the difference in between the two thing of the logs. So we're just building out in between it, but we're not pushing outwards. And the only place we'd be worried about with clearance anyway is along the alley.
And actually, they've needed that space where the rat tails are for protective insulation. So by no means will we be taking.
Do we want to have any more discussion publicly? Do we want to close the public part of the meeting and put forward a motion? Are we ready for that? Okay, I will close the public portion of the meeting at 6:28 p.m. And I think the commission probably is ready to put forward a motion. Do we have someone who wants to do that?
I'll motion, oh,
Are we putting forward the motion as recommended? Because that's very telling.
Very well.
Can you read the motion as?
So the suggested motion is, we don't have to follow the suggested motion, do we?
no.
No, okay. The suggested motion is based on the findings contained in the staff report. I move to approve the application for approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed exterior work at 1601 Colorado Boulevard, subject to the following condition. The logs visible on the exterior of the south addition be repaired and remain visible, but the addition may otherwise be integrated with the appearance of the remainder of the building, including painting or treatment of the logs. Or we can make another motion that is to approve the application as presented. Can I make a motion? I'm not, I can? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm gonna jump in and say, I move to approve the application for approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed exterior work at 1601 Colorado Boulevard as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
Wait a minute, I have to ask one point of clarity. So you just eliminated this, you just certificate of appropriateness as presented.
As the proposal has been presented, not as the suggested motion. All in favor?
And if you could do a roll call on that, Madam Chair, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Ms. Breeze, could you do a roll call on that?
Yes. Nathan Vickers,
Aye.
Rick Wells,
No.
Chris Hayne,
No,
Tim Hayne,
No.
is Patty Tyler here?
No.
Lisa Manifold. Aye.
All right, so that motion failed. Madam Chair, members of the commission, you can entertain a new motion if you wish.
So I will entertain a new motion to approve the application for approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed exterior work at 1601 Colorado Boulevard, subject to the following condition. The logs visible on the exterior of the south addition be repaired and remain visible, but the addition may otherwise be integrated with the appearance of the remainder of the building, including any painting or treatment of the logs.
And Madam Chair, just to be
Yeah.
clear, you know, any commission member, including yourself as chair, isn't bound by the suggested motion, as you just illustrated. There are certainly more than two possible motions. If there are other conditions or other notes that any other commissioner may think are appropriate to a motion, in addition to or in lieu of staff's suggested condition in the staff report, you could certainly craft your own condition. So just want to be real clear, the world is your oyster up there. You can make any motion that you deem appropriate.
So I will retract that motion to give other people a chance to put forward a different motion.
I like that motion now.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, then I put that motion forward again. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Let's do a roll call.
Nathan Vickers,
No?
Rick Wells,
Yes.
Chris Hayne,
Yes,
Tim Hayne,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold. No.
All right, so that motion passes 3-2.
So we will issue the COA for you with that condition attached.
Mhm.
Is there anything else we need to do going forward?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. If the applicant decides that this is not something that they wish to go forward to, will they need to come forward for a new COA?
Did Carmen, did you hear that, or Diane, or?
I did not hear it.
Ask that again, I'm sorry.
If the applicant decides that this is not the direction that they wish to go, do they need to come to see us again for a new COA?
For instance, if they get a firm quote that is cost prohibitive.
Or something
Right.
changes?
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like it's a settled affair, maybe on the other side.
You know, what's interesting is, I'm looking at the code language right now, under COA, under the municipal code, and an applicant's appeal rights. And, you know, what I find interesting under the code language, to your point, is a lack of code language about a right to appeal a conditional approval. There's very clearly a right to appeal a denial of a COA. And what's interesting is that the code isn't clear about an appellate right. But I guess to answer your particular question, and Commissioner, let me know if I'm not, if the question is, if the applicant is dissatisfied with the condition attached to this approval and wishes to seek a different approval, a COA without conditions, or a different COA under different details, absolutely, they could choose to apply for a different COA. It would be a different application if indeed the details of it and the proposals were indeed different. Does that answer the question?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your time.
Sure thing.
We have one more public hearing. We'll wait until.
Bye.
Okay, I will open the public hearing for a COA for window replacement at 1545 Minor Street at 6:35 PM. Mike Davenport will give the staff report.
Okay. This is an application by the city to replace two of the existing windows, the only two windows that are in the restroom building that is in Citizens Park. The property has the address of 1545 Minor Street. In looking into the history of the building, it's not a historic structure. There was, for most of the Sanborn maps, there was a two-story building on the north part of the lot that had businesses on the first floor typically, and had rooms on the second floor. And then over time, there were a variety of accessory buildings that were located on the south, and I think including not an accessory building, but a home at one time. With respect to the building that's there, we don't have a definite date, but the firm that was hired to prepare the construction drawings to do mostly interior work on this building did find a set of plans for construction plans that I believe are dated 1989. In the early 80s, when the National Register nomination was made, there still was the two-story structure on the site. But our guess is around 1989, 1990 is when that building was demolished and the restroom building was constructed. So again, it's not a historic structure. as has been mentioned before, right now, it's, the reason this has taken so long to reach you is that with architects, engineers, and contractors being so busy these days, we did finally get the information. You have photographs of what the building looked like, actually not that long ago with the snow on the ground. And there's also a photograph that shows an enlargement of one of the two windows. So the last thing we got from the firm that was preparing this, they basically sent us 3 different technical information sheets, they're sometimes called cut sheets, that describe the building. And what those are is there's one of the cut sheets is called direct set. And what that is that's what the window manufacturer Weather Shield means. It's going to be a custom window because it may not exactly fit any standard shape. And that quarter circle that you see there is just their symbol to indicate it's going to be a custom window. The second factor about what these window units will look like is what type of glazing. And if you've looked at the floor plan that's within the unit, you are looking directly into the restroom. So it's common to use some kind of obscured glass in order to protect the privacy of the people who are in the restroom. And that's the second cut sheet that deals with what type of glass would be used. And then the final cut sheet that the applicant sent was what is the exterior color on the window unit. And the existing color, and a very commonly used color, is bronze. The color sheet that you see there has what they call craftsman bronze. And that's a fairly common color today that you see on newer window units. So in looking at the design guidelines and the criteria for approval, yeah, this is not a historic structure. So it's more a matter of does it look generally compatible rather than an attempt to recreate a historic character that this never was, because it is a modern building, probably about 30 years old. So the staff finding on the application is to, the suggested motion is to recommend approval, and there aren't any recommended conditions. And that's the staff report, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mike, who's also the applicant?
Yeah, Mike, I have a question.
Yes.
Direct set windows all they are windows that don't have a sash. They're just a frame with glass infilling that frame and then applied stops typically. And so there's a couple ways this could be fabricated. They could do it just one window for the entire opening, because the existing window right now is a vinyl window, which is neither here nor there, and it's a double hung window with an arch, a separate arch window above it. So are they proposing to do one single window that fills the entire opening as like a custom window? Or are they proposing a rectangular window at the bottom and then an arch top on top of that?
In talking to the engineer who was the middleman between me and the architect who is working on this, is that their thinking is that it's not going to fit a standard shape. And so they're thinking about this will be one glass pane. So you're going to have a custom frame and a custom glass or glazing that's going to fit into the frame. That's their thinking.
Okay, so it's just going to have the appearance of the entire opening will be one sheet of glass without any of the horizontals.
That's my understanding.
Any other questions for Mike?
I was wondering, if I may ask, could we get a elevation of that proposed window just so we understand what they're proposing, or?
I think you would need to continue. I think to do that, I would recommend that you continue the meeting, because that's something that I also would like to have and have not received. So I guess it's probably a good idea to actually continue this item so we can get that information. This is an item that the city has hoped for several months to be on your agenda, so continuing it in order to get that specific piece of information and to verify that it will be one piece rather than two pieces of glazing or glass.
Even though the building is not.
Correct.
So I guess I just throw out this nugget that if I had a preference, I'd prefer to see a rectangular window and an arch top as separate elements, introduced into that opening, as opposed to one large opening. It kind of keeps it closer to the original appearance, although it's not that big of a deal. Like you said, it's not contributing. That would be my preference. Keep it a little bit closer to the original look.
So do we want to, before we can make the motion, we have to close the public portion of the meeting, but
Okay.
any other questions or for Mike before we do that? Okay, so I'll close the public. Mike, did you have something?
Yes, the architect or engineer was invited, but they were not able to make it to this meeting, just to let you know.
Okay. So let's close the public portion of the meeting at 6:44, and we can have a discussion, and if we decide we want to continue, we can do that. That seems kind of where. Okay.
I think we just need an
It would be good to see what they're proposing.
Okay. So Mike, do you think you'll be able to get an elevation from your architect by next month?
I'm hopeful of that because in the end, by contacting them several times, we did finally get the information that was in the, we did actually finally get information from them for this meeting. So we are making progress in trying to get the information. So I'm optimistic that we could get that, or at least have them sufficiently describe what it is they're proposing to where you have enough information to know, is it one piece of glass? Is it three? Is it like a double hung window below the half circle that's at the top? So yes, I think one way or the other, we should be able to either get you a drawing or a detailed description of what it will look like.
I would prefer that. I don't want to just throw out a CLA without actually seeing what it looks like. Even though it's not a historic building, that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
we
does-
agree.
Do I have someone who wants to put forward the motion to continue, or what would the date be next month?
I thought we already had that, actually.
It's the 20th.
Well, we might, but I don't know if we. The 20th? If I want to do that,
I'll make a motion that we continue this until our meeting on July 20th, so that we can get a more accurate representation of what exactly the architect is proposing for the window.
have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll see you back again next month, Mike.
Okay,
And
Thank
Mike-
you.
And Mike, I just want to say thank you for your staff reports. I think they're very thorough. And I really appreciate the work that you put into those.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, very
They
well
have
done.
been very helpful.
So that is our old business, new business, public hearings. Do we have any other public comment tonight? No. Okay, then do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, it is 6:46 PM.
Do you need a second?
We don't need a second, no.
Okay.
Okay, I adjourn this meeting 6:46.
All right. I'll have to get my name on it. I've probably done my share anyway today.
That was hard.